What's going on? Welcome to episode 4 of the Rondo. I'm Ryan, and I'm, as always, with my guy Josh Parrish. Josh, you're in a kit, I see, today.
Yes, indeed.
For the first time in the series. Talk us through the kit real quick.
This is a Spain World Cup kit from 2010, I believe, when they indeed went on to win the World Cup. I was entirely on the Spain bandwagon by then. Because at Euro 2008, I made a bet with one of our former classmates, if you remember, Ryan, our friend Yanni.
Yes.
And I bet, I think it was $20 that Spain would win the Euros, and he picked Greece to go back-to-back with the impossible. So optimistic from Yanni, but Spain came through for me, earned me $20, and I put that towards this jersey for the World Cup 2 years later.
Amazing. UCL was back this week. Oof. And I know we spoke offline about how nostalgic it was to see it back, to hear the music and to see the Heineken sponsorship was a bit of a, that just does it for me. And I thought today we could open the show with a highlight each about the first match week gone in the Champions League.
Well, those advertisements are always kind of strange. The broadcaster is obliged to play those. They're UEFA sponsorship, so the broadcaster doesn't get any money for that. And they're always sort of strange. I love it when they've got like pre-rendered ones of fans watching in their living room and everybody, it looks really unnatural, like a paid actor, which of course they are. It's just sort of this weird like Sims 2 world of football fans. There's a little uncanny valley there. But my highlight from the Champions League was the throwback tie, which was Liverpool 3, AC Milan 2. It's back to one of the first Champions League finals I ever watched.
Yes.
Two of the first Champions League finals I ever watched in 2005 and then Milan's revenge in 2007. And they'd never actually played each other outside of those two games, which is bonkers if you think about it. You think about how long both of these clubs have been involved at the top level of European competition.
Yeah.
So this was a real treat for me, and we saw just an open, attacking, end-to-end game with a young Milan side sort of surviving in a baptism of fire before Jordan Henderson put his foot through a sumptuous half volley to win the game, and it was just a great morning. I just loved every second of that tie. So it was a great blend of a traditional powerhouse team versus a former powerhouse back on the stage for the first time in, I think, 7 or 8 years.
Long time since Milan has been on that stage. They're like, apart from Manchester United, they were the first team for me outside of like the Premier League that I was actually following closely. Maybe because the colours were similar, red and red, but beyond the aesthetics of the clubs, I think about Kaká, Paolo Maldini, Cafu, Dida, like all these players that are just, giants of the game, and obviously nice to see a club like Milan back at the very top.
100%. And I think there are some players in this team who have the potential to kick on and become real legends of the club. Sandro Tonali, Ismail Benacer, Teo Hernandez. I think Simon Kjær has already established himself as a bit of a legend after the Euros and everything that happened there with Christian Eriksen, but he's just a giant and a real leader at the back. I really like Alexis Salamakers as well. I think he's highly underrated in the intelligence of his movement. Goes unnoticed by a lot of fans, but the real battle in this game was fought all the way down the same flank. It was the something's got to give kind of push and pull of Trent Alexander-Arnold always wanting to operate in the final third and Rafael Leao not wanting to track back. So the entire match was basically played down the same side. And I thought at some point somebody's got to give up and hold their position, but neither did. So it made this incredible battle where Liverpool would spam attacks down that side and get heaps of deliveries into the area, and Milan might cling on and spring a counter-attack down that flank as well. And I think a young Milan side, it was a baptism of fire for them, as I said. The first time they've really played in a match of that importance and against that level of opposition. So I think they acquitted themselves pretty well. I think Milan fans, despite the defeat, should be happy with what they saw from some of those young guys like Brahim Diaz, who really took the moment on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the biggest question for Milan heading into this new season was obviously the departure of Donnarumma, whether Mike Maignan, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I hope that's right.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Could kind of rise to the occasion. Big gloves to fill, but from what I've seen in Serie A, he's kind of settled into that number one goalkeeping spot, and I think that has helped calm things down, especially around the defensive side of Milan's game.
It's a very shrewd signing, and Milan, for all they would have wanted to keep Donnarumma, they couldn't afford to pay the wages he was asking for.
Shout out Raiola.
As one of my Milan supporting friends has said to me, they've replaced the former best keeper in Serie A with the new best keeper in Serie A. This is a very shrewd move, signing a player from a Ligue 1 winning Lille side. He had 21 clean sheets last season in Ligue 1, which is one short of the all-time record.
Yeah,
and the guy's just a fantastic shot stopper. And I'm surprised, actually, that Mo Salah has gotten away with just blasting every penalty without much thought for this long. He had some incredible, penalty streak where he hadn't missed one for so long.
Yeah.
And finally a goalkeeper picked the right way and got a glove on it. I've never thought his penalty technique was particularly refined, and I think that was finally exposed.
And for this Milan side, where do you think the ceiling is in their European adventure? Like you said, 7 years out of the Champions League. Now they're back. How far do you reckon they can take it?
I think a quarterfinal would be a big success for this side. And I think that's probably where they'll end up. It all depends on the draw. It's really difficult to know, who they're going to come up against in the next rounds if they finish second in this group, which they probably will. But I'm looking forward to watching them again. I think they play some really entertaining football. They're quite flexible tactically in the way they go about things, and they've got some real gems. I think having Zlatan Ibrahimovic miss this fixture really hurt them. And although Rebic scored, and he has a habit of scoring big goals, they weren't able to play on the front foot because they didn't have a player who could operate with his back to goal like Ibrahimovic does.
Yeah.
So having that option available, and they did bring on Olivier Giroud later in the game, which helped them a tad, I thought. But he didn't really have enough time to influence things. This team was set up to counterattack, but they won't always play that way, which is important to note. When they come up against sides that will let them have the ball, I still think this Milan team is good enough to score goals.
Yeah, 100%. Well, my highlight of the Champions League is going to come out a bit of left field. It's a bit of an underdog story with a dark underbelly. Sheriff FC, the first Moldovan club to be in the Champions League, but obviously they have a little bit of a complicated history. They're not actually situated in Moldova, so people are questioning whether they are the first Moldovan club. They are located, and I have it written down because I don't know how to say it, but they're located in Tiraspol, which is the capital of a non-recognized country known as Transnistria.
Sounds like where Dracula comes from.
Yeah, a breakaway state, which is located on the Moldovan-Ukrainian border. They have a bit of Russian sympathy. So the first game in the Champions League against Shakhtar Donetsk, who are obviously playing away from their usual home, there was the political element to the game, which I thought was an interesting backstory. But I don't want to talk too much about the politics because I find stories like this, small clubs out of small countries playing at the biggest stage, I think is a nice blueprint and a nice kind of glimpse for other clubs like Ferencváros, Midtjylland out of Denmark. These clubs that can only dream of the riches sometimes, but can see little case studies, as a way forward to the big stage. And I was really impressed by their performance. They have a striker, Adama Traore, who is more efficient than the Adama Traore that is currently in the Premier League. And they played kind of just brave football, and I was really, really impressed for a club that, really comes from a country that doesn't exist in the eyes of the UN.
It's a very interesting tale, and I think it's too complicated to get into here.
No, 100%.
They do tower over the rest of the Moldovan league in terms of their resources.
Yeah, so before you go on, 19 league titles since 2001, including 9 of the last 10 and 6 in a row from 2015 onwards. Where they get their finances and resources obviously very dodgy. We won't go into that, but yes, please go on.
It was just cool to see the celebrations and stuff on the sidelines. I mean, I don't think this is really a fairy tale from what I've read about the club, but it's still an upset. And to see upsets in European football when the resources are so skewed. I mean, against a team like Shakhtar Donetsk, who has a really proud history
Yes.
in both the Champions League and Europa League, and continually on-sell great players to big clubs, and also Fred. It was great to see an upset.
I mean, think about it. Douglas
Fantastic
Costa,
goals.
Luis Adriano, they have a great history
Yep.
of cultivating Brazilian talent, especially, and selling them on.
Yeah, 100%. And it's always been that blend of the kind of Ukrainian national team players plus a whole bunch of Brazilians, and they seem to have this incredible scouting network that has kept them on top. When you venture far out into the eastern reaches of Europe, Ryan, you find all sorts of stories. And,
All sorts of crazy stories. But
some of them more savoury than others.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm excited to see how this small kind of like team goes up against Real Madrid, Inter Milan. Obviously not expected to make it out of the group, but I think politics and kind of that dark underbelly aside, it's nice to see small teams kind of feature on the biggest stage. And for me, that was a nice little moment. Sometimes you have to ignore the negative stuff and just enjoy football for what it is, really.
And lastly, I just love their badge. Team called Sheriff with a sheriff star. It's just, it's the Wild East, actually.
Yeah, it's a branding dream, and I'm sure it was a big moment for so many of those players. So many people dream of playing in the Champions League, but to actually get there is another thing entirely. So yes, they were my.
And we uncovered another Adama Traore, another one,
which is insane. And I'm hoping to see big things from him throughout the group stage. But now, moving on, leaving the Champions League behind and entering now the world of the Premier League. A lot happened on the weekend. And there's one thing in particular I want to talk about. Before that, touching on Adama Traore, I wanted to just tell you that I've never seen anyone more wasteful. A cross didn't hit someone's head in Wolves versus Brentford, and I promise you, because I was keeping track, I was like, I want to talk to Josh about this real quick. 89th minute, he hit someone on the head, Raul Jimenez. Apart from that, every single cross just blazed past everyone.
I'm never a huge fan of a player that the whole team becomes about. And Adama Traore, when he's on your team, he gets the ball and he dribbles, and he can beat players, but the end product is so inconsistent that maybe having a more collective approach would bear fruit more often.
Look, they call him the Ivorian Dan James. I didn't make that up. So, and I just think the final product needs to be better for a player that is talked about that much. And for a Wolves side that is struggling to put goals in the back of the net. If you're getting in those positions, and he was, I think to his credit, always in that final third, he's bursting into space like you said, but if you're not putting the right service in, I think it's super wasteful. I think another thing that interested me on the weekend that caught my eye, Mark Noble getting subbed on in that amazing clash between United and West Ham, which, United did end up winning. Getting subbed on in literally the 94th minute, cold. I don't know if he was warming up. I think he was just sitting there, and David Moyes went, "It's your time to shine, son." Came up, took the penalty, obviously. You know how it goes. David De Gea, who is not a good penalty saver by any stretch of the imagination.
Famously.
I think a stat that I heard, and don't quote me on this, he hasn't saved the last 8 to 10 penalties. It might be even more, it might stretch back further.
I think that's, if you include the entire penalty shootout against Villarreal from the Europa League final, it's probably double that.
Yeah, so for me, I wanted to know, it's reminiscent of the Euros. England, Italy, Bukayo Saka taking one, obviously, but then Rashford and Sancho getting subbed on to take it. What is this obsession with turning to the bench in this critical moment of taking a penalty and going, hey, your first kick is going to be the penalty?
I think it is a classic example of data being used in football without context around it. So there was a big study that was done about the success of penalty taking in shootouts and in tournaments, and they found that players who had played less minutes and who'd been subbed on in extra time were more likely to score than players who'd been running around for 120 minutes when you go to the shootout, which makes sense. But I don't think there was a separate data set for players who literally haven't had a kick of the ball yet, actually stepping up to the spot. And I also think this is maybe somewhere where football could improve in terms of how it prepares its substitutes.
Yes.
Like if you look at the NFL, the kickers, if they're coming on for a last-minute field goal, they actually have a little net that they kick the ball into on the sideline so that
special
they can
teams,
just get the
right?
feel of it. Yeah, exactly. And this is a special team substitution if you're bringing on Mark Noble to take literally one kick to get a point. So it would be an interesting place for a home team to invest and maybe make that facility only available to their players and not the away side. But not even for these penalty takers, but just for attacking players that are coming on to try and influence the game and score a goal. Just to have a few practice shots before you get on the pitch. It doesn't have to be on the sideline. Could be, down somewhere in the depths of the, underground complex that they have at all these stadiums. Just a bit of AstroTurf and a goal to kick the ball at. You say you're coming on in 5 minutes, run down the tunnel, have a few shots and come back. And it just heaps pressure on you when you're coming on just to do that, when you wouldn't have been involved otherwise. David Moyes stood by his decision saying Noble's got a better penalty record than anyone else on the team. But the spotlight is on you in a way that it isn't quite if you're already a member of the starting 11 when you come on just to take a spot kick.
And what does it do you reckon, to the psychology of the 11 players on the pitch? That the gaffer is saying, I don't trust any of you who have played the entire game to take this last kick. And if I'm Declan Rice, which I'm not, the only thing Declan Rice about me is that I've eaten rice most of my life. But if I'm the captain, I'm taking the ball, putting it down, and taking the shot. I've played the whole game. I have a feel for it. I have a feel for the occasion. Like, how does a team respond after the coach has just gone, I don't trust any of you?
It's an interesting one. I think it's going to be an easy one for Moyes to explain. You just say, look at the stat sheet. But I would be a little bit annoyed if I was Declan Rice. He was already getting himself into the zone. He kissed the ball for luck, and then Noble swoops out of nowhere to take the spot kick from underneath him. I think that does create a few issues in the dressing room, especially when, Noble maybe doesn't command the respect in the West Ham dressing room that he used to. If he was some giant of the club, then you can't really question it. If it was United subbing Ronaldo on to take a penalty, I don't think anyone would be saying anything. But he's on his way out. He's arguably not good enough to play for West Ham anymore, and he's not starting games. He probably should be in the Championship by now. It doesn't sit as well, and I am sympathetic towards him because I thought it was a great save from De Gea. It wasn't a terrible penalty. But, I think there would be some ill feeling if Declan Rice, is that kind of personality.
Let's think about the reverse then, because the reverse has been done as well. I mean, you think about Louis van Gaal subbing on Tim Krul for Jasper Cillessen, for Holland. You think about Edouard Mendy getting subbed off for Kepa. It's not as controversial maybe when a goalkeeper gets subbed during these moments because they're penalty specialists, and when it pays off dividends. If it doesn't work, you don't really hear about it as much. Why do you think that is? Because I have my own theory that maybe it's, as a goalkeeper in a penalty situation, you're not expected as much to save it, but as the person striking the ball, you're expected to put it in the back of the net.
I'm sure it is still painful for the keepers who get replaced in shootouts. But I do like the keeper sub because it's a disruptive thing, a substitution. And a penalty kick is all about stability and, replicating the same motion and the same technique that you've practiced over and over again. Whereas trying to save a penalty is, in my view, a little bit more chaotic, and it's less reliable, and there's no expectation of success, as you say. So that kind of energy coming straight off the bench and just trying to get in this, kick taker's face, bouncing up and down the line, doing whatever you can to distract and try and force an error, I think is more effective than bringing somebody on cold who has to make a very precise motion and replicate, what they've practiced perfectly without a warm-up. I
just felt for Mark Noble because when he was coming on, he didn't look confident. And this is just someone in Australia watching it in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was shattered when Luke Shaw handballed it, and then when I saw they were bringing Mark Noble, I just looked at his face, and I promise you, and this is not just for content or whatever the hell this is, I went, he's saving.
I felt the same way.
I believed with every part of my body. I was like, we've won. And we'll end this section on this. Would he have asked to come on, or would David Moyes have turned and gone, "You've got a good record, time to step up"?
I think this was Moyes led, I would imagine. I don't think you would be so presumptuous as a player to say it's the 94th minute of the match. You got to sub me on, boss. I got to take this.
Yeah.
I can imagine you saying that at an Eltham Eagles game. If you're on the bench.
Look, my record speaks for itself. Although this season was a bit rough. I had a rough patch. I missed a couple, but for the most part, I've done good from the spot. No, but I wouldn't. I might. You know what? I would.
You probably would.
Yeah, because when the numbers don't lie.
And also, the managerial position at Eltham Eagles is not quite so formal, let's say.
Always
definitely not a stable job.
Well, another job that has not been super stable recently, Juventus, return of Max Allegri. How many times has he been at the club? Is this the second or the third? I don't know.
I think it's only the second
Is it
stop.
on the
It
sec-
feels like
but
it should be the third.
It feels like he's been in and out the revolving door of the Juventus job. And this morning they dropped points again against AC Milan, but struggling to kind of recapture that form that won them all those Scudettos in a row. Struggling to recapture that form that took them to a Champions League final that attracted Cristiano Ronaldo to the project in Turin.
Mm-hmm.
And I know growing up, my distinct memory of you is you having a Juventus jersey. Kind of like this one, being a big Juve fan when Pavel Nedved and all them.
I was not a Juve fan.
Don't backtrack. Don't backtrack.
Hey, you're the one wearing a Juve jersey.
Yeah, because I want them to know, stay salty. Ronaldo came to United, so it's fine. But I want to know your thoughts on what really is going on at Juve. What's causing this kind of dip in form after years of success?
Well, this is their third manager in 3 years after Sarri and Pirlo. Shout out to Max Allegri. Because he could have taken many plum jobs around Europe. He had a lot of trophies and a lot of success. He made it to a Champions League final in his 5 years with the club. And he just hung around for 2 years until they had to hire him again because everything went up, in flames. So, look, this is a period of transition for Juve. I don't think you can rely on them to win Serie A in perpetuity. The streak was always going to come to a close at some point. And I also think in the wake of Ronaldo leaving the club on the eve of the season, a lot of your plans have to change all of a sudden. So there's going to be some tumult, shall we say. Having said that, Max Allegri does not yet know what his best team is or what formation he should be playing. It's sort of gone from 4-4-2 to sort of 4-3-1-2 with Dybala in the 10 role. There are lots of attacking weapons. They don't seem to fit together particularly well. Kulusevski, Chiesa, Bernardeschi are all in and out of the team. Moise Kean came back right at the deadline. I still think there are enough pieces in this squad to have a successful Serie A campaign, and I think it will level out over time because they have played Napoli and AC Milan in their first couple of matches in the league. So they've had a rough start, and it wasn't a good time for them to play those teams, given Ronaldo's departure. They need to figure out a midfield solution immediately. They don't seem to have that reliable heartbeat in midfield the way Pjanic was during Allegri's first spell at the club. And there was talk that they were going to try and bring him back. Of course, that didn't end up happening. But they haven't found that midfield balance. I'm not a fan of Adrien Rabiot. I just think he's wholly overrated as a footballer and keeps failing upwards somehow. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand the appeal. And I think Aaron Ramsey has been hugely hard done by in how little he's got into the starting 11. My ideal Juventus midfield 3 would probably be Bentancur, Locatelli and Aaron Ramsey. It's a really bizarre situation and some bizarre decisions being made by Allegri. I don't back how he started the campaign, but I do back him to eventually figure it out. The thing I would love him to try is using Federico Chiesa as a wing-back because he played there at Fiorentina a little bit and his brand of incredibly fast physical play works really well in that wing-back role. And then Danilo could work as part of a back three, as maybe one of the ball-playing defenders. We've seen a lot in European football, a fullback like Kyle Walker making up a back three and providing recovery pace in behind a couple of aging centre-backs in Bonucci and Chiellini.
Yeah.
So he could rotate in and out with De Ligt playing a role as well. That's the formation I see working, with the midfield three I mentioned, and then Dybala playing as the second striker with Morata up front. We know Morata had a disastrous Euros, but I still think, he has it in him to be a success at Juventus. He was great the first time around.
Yes.
He's a relentless hard worker, gets into goal-scoring positions. Sometimes his finishing deserts him, but I would love to see him have a successful season in front of goal and kind of banish all the boo boys.
And if Max Allegri could have signed one player, in your opinion, in the window just gone, who would it have been to try and kind of tip the balance for them?
I don't know if they need any more players. I think they just need to find the right combination of the talents they have available. There will need to be succession plans in place for Bonucci and Chiellini, of course, but I still think they've got plenty more to give. Maybe there is a central midfield issue. Maybe they need more of a tempo-controlling player in there. And I'm not sure they quite have the guy to put his foot on the ball and sort of spray passes around in the kind of Pirlo mould. They would have loved to sign Tonali, but AC Milan already had Bagsies on him.
Now we move to the only thing you can rely on in the Rondo, which is Premier League predictions. And we're going to tighten up this segment. So we've already written our predictions down. We're going to send it to each other. But just a recap of Matchday 5. Josh, you took Matchday 5. We didn't do terribly well across the board. But the two things that stand out, I got the Aston Villa Everton game right. I backed my transfer window dark horses. Leon Bailey came good. But the tip that I knew would come back and haunt me was the Tottenham Chelsea game, where I went, you know what, I just want to see Chelsea lose one. And they didn't. They crushed Tottenham. Adjustments at halftime. So today's tips that I'm about to send you, I've gone with all head, all logic, no heart.
No romance.
In an attempt to come back from this 2-0 deficit that I've found myself in. So let's take a look at yours, though. Predictably, you've gone Chelsea win, United win, Leicester win, Everton win, which were
exactly the same as yours.
Exactly the same. You've gone for a West Ham win. I've gone a Leeds draw with West Ham.
Interesting. I tossed that one up, but I thought Mikel Antonio coming back from suspension tips the scales in West Ham's favour. And Leeds aren't doing terribly well at the moment.
I thought they did all right against Newcastle. I thought they created a bunch of chances, but only scored one. So I'm hoping that at Ellen Road they can get up. Watford versus Newcastle, you've got a draw. I've got Watford taking the cake, only because they were so impressive in their win against Norwich, and I know it's against Norwich. But I think they'll come in high. Who you
tipped to win last week. Let's not forget that.
Because I have a soft spot for Norwich. But again, this week, all logic. And I'm just going, look, Watford are coming off high. Newcastle aren't playing that well. I think Alain Saint-Maximin is their only outlet in terms of creativity and getting on the score sheet. And I just think Watford have a bit more dynamic players that can get on the score sheet for them. But you've gone for a draw.
Yeah, I've gone for a draw just because I think Newcastle put up a little bit more defensive resistance than Norwich do, and I think Watford might struggle to score more than one goal. And I think Newcastle have always got one goal in them, if not any more than that.
Well, we've both gone Liverpool for their game against Brentford, which you'd expect them to get up, even though Brentford played really well against Wolves. Southampton Wolves, I thought was a tough one to pick. But we've both gone Southampton just because, I don't know about you, I was impressed by their performance against Man City, the way they kind of held them off.
Very unlucky with that penalty that was overturned. There's some weird VAR calls this weekend.
Crazy VAR calls this weekend, and I just haven't been impressed by Wolves. I watched them against Brentford. I thought they laboured across the pitch. And like I mentioned on my rant before, Adama Traore is just not the guy to give Raul Jimenez and the like service that they need across 90 minutes. It's just a struggle to watch.
Yeah, it's not clicking for Wolves at the moment. They're in a really bad run, and I'm not sure how they're going to get out of it because, this manager that they've got in charge seems to be picking pretty much the same team I'm not sure. Maybe they need to bring Daniel Pedence into the starting 11 to unlock something. He only seems to be given these substitute bursts, and I really think he's good enough to play as a starting attacking midfielder for them in that formation.
Moving on to, I think, one of the biggest games of the round, apart from Chelsea Man City at the top of the match day. Arsenal Tottenham, big derby here. You've gone Spurs win, even though you are an outspoken hater of Nuno Espirito Santo.
He's not bad. You've
done a lot of backtracking. You've done a lot of backtracking.
Boring.
You need to chill out and stop backtracking.
You can get results. He's just really, really boring.
I've gone for a draw. I've gone for a draw personally. I think Arsenal are on the bounce, 2 wins, and Spurs 2 losses on the bounce. I think they'll cancel each other out. But you're expecting Spurs to get up.
I am, because despite the result against Chelsea, I was actually really impressed with them in the first half. They pressed really high. I liked the midfield composition. I liked a lot of what Nuno actually brought to that fixture in terms of countering Chelsea's build-up play. But unfortunately, you're playing against a team who can afford to bring N'Golo Kante off the bench. And Chelsea altered their formation from a 3-4-3 to a 3-5-2. They brought Mason Mount out of that kind of inside forward role and Kante into the midfield. And then, they just had too much for Tottenham. They've just got more resources at their disposal. And that's why I think Chelsea is such a terrifying prospect this season. Still, I was encouraged by Tottenham's first half. And they were just outgunned in terms of resources. And I think coming up against Arsenal, they might just have a little bit more steel than Arsenal do.
But the last game of the match day, I think, is a great fixture because these are 2 amazing, kind of improving, eye-catching teams. Crystal Palace, Brighton. Look, I didn't watch Brighton's game. I only saw the highlights. But I did watch Crystal Palace Liverpool. And I thought Crystal Palace looked great. It's totally different from what Roy Hodgson's side was set up to do. Patrick Vieira's come in with this high press and this attractive attacking football. Conor Gallagher's impressive. Wilfried Zaha, as always, is a threat. And Odsonne Edouard, obviously didn't get much love against Liverpool, but 2 goals on his debut can't be forgotten that quickly. I've gone for a Crystal Palace win. You've gone for a Brighton win away from home.
Brighton are 4th, man. Brighton are doing well. Brighton need to be respected, and Graham Potter does too.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of different attacking weapons. They're a really smart, well-coached team who underperformed on their expected goals by a wide margin last season. Now they're finally hitting the back of the net with some regularity. I love Cucurella at left back. I think he's a fantastic signing. And I think they're going to have too much for Crystal Palace. I think it's going to be one of the games of the weekend, though. I'm actually really looking forward to it.
Well, those are our picks. We ran through them a bit faster this time. Josh, thank you so much again for joining me. And to everyone for watching, let us know what you think about anything that we've said. If you still want to throw shade at Josh, which some people have, feel free.
Fair.
Drop it in there. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Ryan.